Alright, for day 3 of the strength program, we're going to have some deadlifts and some dumbbell bench to start us off. The deadlifts you will see on the program are listed a little differently than the other movements in that it's a 3+3 for the reps. Essentially what that means is we're going to do 3 reps, we're going to stand back up to reset, and we're going to do another 3 reps then after. Deadlifts are a little strange in that compared to the other 2 movements, that they kind of start at the bottom of the movement, much like if we were to set the squat bar up here and start the squat at the bottom and try and stand up with it. So it's also a bit more variable in terms of it's not a kind of quite a fixed position that the bar can roll on as it can move. There's a lot more movement in terms of like knees, hips, ankles, shoulders can all get shifted around a little bit from one rep to the next. So by resetting in the middle, we give ourselves a chance to make sure that the final reps are likely in a better position than they would be if we were kind of just go all the way along. As you get more and more proficient at it, that's not necessarily required. You should be able to maintain consistency across no matter how many reps it is, if the loading is accurate and suitable, but it just gives us a better chance, and it's a lot easier because we can just leave the bar on the floor and stand up. We can reset very quickly versus, you know, with squats and bench, we'd have to kind of re-rack in and it's a bit more messy and drawn out. So I'm going to run through the barbell variant of the deadlift here. This may not be the best variant for you to start with if you've never done deadlifts before. We may start with a modified version like a rack pull or an RDL with the bar, or possibly like even a trap bar or something like that, that allows us to practice the combination. If you're coming on the strength program, you should have done probably plenty of different hip hinges, you know, dumbbell RDLs and all those sorts of things. With the deadlift, we kind of take that same movement and then kind of extend it a bit further to get lower down to the ground. But depending on how proficient you are at that, it might be better to give you a staged variation. So like I say, slightly elevated bar, so that we can kind of practice just that transition from hip hinge into lowering down to the floor without losing position to start off. But as I say, I won't talk too much about that there, because that's something that the coaches will discuss with you in the sessions and get you set up with the best variant for you. All of the stuff we'll discuss in terms of the setup will still apply for regardless of whatever movement variant you're doing. But just that, yeah, it may not be straight into this full barbell deadlift to start off, because you'll find that if we can stage a little more, you'll pick it up much quicker with much better habits right from the start, if we need to. But as I say, we might just be straight in on it, depends on each individual situation. So for deadlift, feet are just about hip width apart. We want to set up with the shoelaces just in under the bar, so a small bit of a gap between the bar and the shin, but not too much. We can always adjust it a little bit as we get down. It starts off with a hip hinge, and the same as a kettlebell deadlift or dumbbell deadlift, and it's best because our hands are free in this particular setup. We want to try and keep the hands on the ribs in the beginning few reps to make sure we can keep that position and not kind of stretch over or arch out too much. By having the hands there, it kind of helps create a bit of feedback. So hands are just on the ribs, helps keep them in place and just remind us to keep that brace. So once we've slid back to essentially the bottom of the dumbbell RDL, we want to start bending the knees while allowing the hips to sit back and maintaining this torso angle all the way down until we can get our hands fully around the bar. Now the bars that will be a little different to the dumbbells and kettlebells. There's a little bit of a rattle and a little bit of looseness in the bar, and in this, because the plates are sat on the floor rather than the bar sat over hooks, that we have to take that out ourselves, and it's important to do that, because if we don't, the initial drive off the floor with our legs is going to be lost in just taking that slack out of the bar. Particularly as you get more and more and more plates on, you'll also get a bit of a flex in the bar, which is a kind of a more exaggerated version of the same thing. But even if you've just got a 2.5 kilo plate on each side, there's going to be that little bit of rattle in the bar and the collars that we need to pull out. So set up, hips slide back, we lower down, hands are thumb width outside the leg, and once we get here, we're going to just pull that tension out of the bar. So try and wind the shoulders up as if you're trying to bend the bar this way and pull it in tight to you. From there, we drive with the legs, and then it finishes like a stiff leg deadlift. All the way back down to the floor. The bar weight rests in the floor, but we stay tight, we don't relax and slack off. We keep our tightness, and we go again, all the way back down. We'll do 3 reps, we'll leave the bar on the floor, stand up, we reset from the top down, and do our second 3 reps to finish out the 6. It can say 4 RAR, but again, for the first few sessions, don't worry too much about that. Go very easy, stay well within yourself. One trick for loading the bar actually, and unloading the bar, take a small plate, put it just on the inside plate. You can roll it up onto that. All these ones from here on out slide on and off much easier. And then when you have one side fully loaded, Obviously with the collars off, you can tip the bar up and dump the plates off. Just saves a lot of time and effort loading and unloading, or if you have the bar in a rack pull or something, the plates will slide on and off, you don't need to worry about that. With that, we have a dumbbell bench, so you're going to want a bit of space, obviously with the bar, possibly push the bikes back a little bit for the dumbbell bench. So the bench will be set up there. I'm going to angle it just a little bit so you can see a little bit better for the purpose of the video. So dumbbell bench, you should all be fairly familiar with this one. Dumbbell start over the shoulders. Let the inside head of the dumbbell sag just slightly into the middle and help keep the tension a little more on the chest, all the way down and pressing back up. Alright, so that will be our first two movements. For the purpose of the video, I'm just going to rattle straight through the other ones because there's no major setup changes in terms of racks and positions and everything today. But once you get your A block done, you would clean down and throw away the bar, so that's not in the way anymore, and we would clean down any dumbbells we're not using. For the second part of this block, you're going to be using the cables and a pair of dumbbells, two pairs of dumbbells actually. With the cable machine, you want to set the bench up at a bit of an angle to the cable machine. We'll see why when we get to the cable row part. We're going to have an overhead press, a lateral raise, and a seated cable row. The overhead press, we can sit on the bench, dumbbells pop up, we can sit to the side either if we want. Elbows not quite straight forward, not quite fully out to the side, somewhere in between, pushing up ever so slightly in just so that they finish over the shoulders and then back down. There's not a massive arc on them, it's fairly straight up and down from there. And then we have our lateral raises. We'll need a lighter set of dumbbells. The reps are 15 to 20 I think on this one, so they're quite high, yeah. 15 to 20, so there is 5 kilos should be on all the platforms. There's 2.5 and 1.25 kilo plates. There is some 2.5 kilo dumbbells down the end of the room as well. Lateral raise we can do either standing or we can do seated. If we're seated, we need to be on the long side of the bench so the dumbbells can hang either side. And we lift up shoulder height, back down. Seated can be a little bit stricter and help you maintain a better torso position, but you can do them standing. If we're doing standing, we just need to make sure we have plenty of space away from the rack. Lifting up and back down. All right, we don't need to go crazy high with them. We need to get up to shoulder height and hands either flat or maybe back of the dumbbell slightly raised up, but not turn the front side up or rotating them out that way. Third one then is going to be our seated cable row. So we want to sit, the reason we set the bench up at an angle lengthways is that we can slide backwards and forwards more along the bench as we would need to. Obviously you would have put your bar away if this was a regular session, so that won't be in the way. And then from there we're pulling down, hands just outside the chest as low as you can kind of get them without pressing the elbows away. So tight into the chest and back up from there. So that'll be our 3 movements. We have 8 to 12 reps on the seated dumbbell press, lateral raises at 15 to 20 today, and then 15 to 20 on the seated cable rows as well. Final block then, the cardio is going to be 30 seconds of hard work, 30 seconds easy work, running for 10 rounds. And our final block of lifting movements is going to be alternating dumbbell bench with the Pallof press. And for the alternating dumbbell bench, I'll show you very quickly. Sets the same as a regular dumbbell bench, but instead of both dumbbells moving together, one lowers down and then the other. Should let you dial in a little more on each side. Probably drop down at least one dumbbell size for 10 reps each side, I'd say, to start off, and then you might push on more from there. We also have a Pallof press, which you will need a band for. Bands can be found down the end of the room, rather than Robin Mullins on the strength or the sweat side, because they'll need them from time to time, so there should be plenty of bands down the end of the room. We'll grab the band in hand, step to the side. Again, you would normally have cleared all this stuff out of the way. Just step into the side enough that there's a bit of tension on the band. We don't want to create massive pull on it, it's not necessary. So just step into the side. The feet should be nice and square, hips nice and square, shoulders nice and square, and from there, we're pressing out, trying to avoid the band pulling us over to the side. We do 10 presses in and out, keeping that nice strong position. You can step a little further to the side if you want to create a little bit of tension. And then we would obviously do 10 on our other side. And that will be day 3. So yeah, a little bit more on day 3 in terms of the deadlift, just because it's a bit more variable. The options, depending if you've never done a barbell deadlift before, the options to start off, there's a little more there, and you know the best one, it's not necessarily just a case of doing like a barbell squat. We could do maybe to a box and we just manage the load. There's a couple more options and variations available to make sure you get the right start with deadlifts and get off, as you say, without any bad habits right from the get-go. So that's day 3, and yeah, hopefully you enjoy it.